And also moving on to session 5, today we have Thomas Polson, who yesterday talked about the intellectual property, but today he will be talking about visual effects and post-production. So when you are ready, Thomas Polson.
Yeah, thank you very much. Some of what I'll be talking about, actually, Kun Eric and Kun Pun covered. There's a lot of overlap with what they were discussing and the nature of the business, visual effects business, and globally, and what I'll be talking about. But I have 35 years plus in post-production, working in visual effects. I've worked on shows for HBO, Warner Brothers, Fox, a long list of a lot of different projects. So it's an interesting period in production, in post-production, and the tools. There used to be a lot of different tools that everybody used, and you had to be a specialist in that one tool. And it's still true to a certain degree, but now what's happening is the amount of tools and technology is becoming very narrow. And so what the studios want and the production companies want to use as far as tools and technologies is becoming a smaller set of a group of software, each with their own strength, that they work together to be able to create the shows. But the most important thing I wanted to start out talking about was the effect of the pandemic on production. So if I can go ahead and share my screen. Here we go, screen. Basically, to iterate what Kun Pun had said, is up until the pandemic, the studios were very reluctant to outsource work to artists around the world. They wanted it in very controlled environments and not a lot of individuals. But two things happened. One was the pandemic, where a lot of artists were forced to work at home. And so the studios had to accommodate that. Second thing happened was the expansion of the streaming industry, which really accelerated the amount of production that needed to be done. So what that did was put a big demand on artists around the world. And as Kun Pun said, the studios were looking everywhere to find artists. At one point a year ago, I do a lot of work with Korean studios. Between Netflix and Disney, they had pretty much hired the entire Korean visual effects industry to work on their projects, and there were no artists available. So that gives you this idea of the scope of the problem of finding talent in this new world of streaming media and working remotely. So what's helped alleviate this is the Amazon Web Cloud infrastructure. A lot of the tools for dealing with remote work are all running on, probably the majority on the Amazon cloud, but also Azure, which is Microsoft's cloud, is being used, as well as a certain degree Google. But a lot of the infrastructure, even if it's a third-party software, is going to be running some sort or another on Amazon cloud. The other benefit of the Amazon cloud is now they offer instant studio infrastructure. If you need to set up a post workflow on a global production or even a local production, now instead of having an office with all servers and all in one location and have to support all that and spend all the money on that, you can literally turn it on in the cloud and then interact directly with it, including workstations, render farms, storage, review systems, color, visual effects software. The whole 9 yards can all be managed within a cloud infrastructure in one location without having to expand your office space. The other issue when you're dealing with the working remote is managing of the talent. What was discovered, one of the DreamWorks productions had gone in, they were in the middle of post-production, and when the pandemic hit, and they had to immediately move all their talent around the world to a remote working situation, their productivity dropped about 40%, and it had a big impact on how fast they were getting the work done. And my experience in working with remote talent is you'll find some people that work well unsupervised and other people who don't work so well unsupervised. So those are some of the issues that you have to deal with now when you're dealing with unsupervised remote talent is what are their work habits? How do you keep them involved? How do you get the productivity out of them that you need to make your deadlines and meet the quality that you need to get approvals from the directors and the production company? So those are some of the issues that have been addressed by using tools like Zoom and doing conference calls and stuff like that in regular meetings. So now we have a way to be able to interact directly with the talent and be able to creatively discuss issues immediately and not have to wait or not have to do it through email or something like that. So that is another reality of the current situation. And that goes back to handling the productivity issues as far as being able to keep the workers moving forward and being able to get your shots done. The other thing that has to be considered, especially when you're doing the visual effects heavy movie, is the scheduling of the work and when it's going to get completed. And it's very imperative that you have a strong management team that can make sure the expectations of deliveries are met and are reasonable, and you're not really hurting your artists trying to make crazy deliveries. So these are some of the things that can consider. Me personally, I have a number of clients that I literally have not met them face to face ever, and I've been working with them for the past 4 years. So that's a new reality. You don't often actually meet the people you're going to be working with for a long period of time. And you still develop good relationships, you still develop good communication, but that's kind of what the world is now, which creates an opportunity for Thailand. As Kunpun said, it's like there's an opportunity to start bringing all these workers and people who are not part of the bigger infrastructure into the cloud, because there's such a demand for talent right now. The other aspect that has to be discussed too in dealing with this remote work environment that exists now is the studios are very adamant about security. And almost any company that they're going to hire as a visual effects company or an outsourcing company, they're going to have to qualify with what's called a trusted partner network. And it's basically a security survey of your facilities and your work practices and a guide to the best practices for creating the best security. So no images or data or anything that belong to the clients or the studios is ever stolen or leaked or anything like that. So this is something that in order to participate in the studio production pipelines, you have to be able to qualify for a trusted partner network. Now, as far as the tools that we're looking at, it's kind of like I said, it's been narrowed down to a fairly handful of tools that are used for primarily everything. One of the most amazing tools that has come along for the last 20 years is Houdini. Houdini now is used almost everything for realistic simulation of water explosions. They're using it for environmental creation, mountains. They have a mountain generation simulation, crowds, cloths. It does a lot of things, and it does a lot of things really well. And almost every visual effect shot is now pretty much touched by Houdini. Regardless, some studios have their own proprietary software like ILM and Weta Digital and Scanline have their own tools that they've created. But by and large, Houdini is being used on every major feature film and television series for creating all kinds of visual effects that look realistic but are used to be practical, like explosions and volcanoes and massive armies and whatever. You know, it's one of the tools that is very necessary now. The downside is that Houdini's a little complicated, so qualified artists are at a premium. So this is another area of looking at training Thai artists in Houdini to become experts in this type of software, because there's a higher demand for Houdini artists and they get paid better generally. So that's one of the primary tools that's becoming very important in making TV shows and feature films at this point. As said earlier, Unreal 5 now is becoming an integral part. I won't go into too much detail that you've already heard all the amazing things it can do. Along with MetaHuman, you start combining these tools and you're now looking at being able to create digital doubles, digital stuntmen, being able to do shots that are, you know, you wouldn't be able to do before, because you'd be risking people's lives, you know, or your star's lives. You can do a version of your lead actor as a metahuman and have him do crazy stunts, all, you know, even in real time if you need to, because of these tools. And these tools have really only started becoming to this level in about last 5 years or so. So this is all very new, very cutting edge. The Foundry, they're responsible for Nuke, which is the industry standard for compositing. Every studio, every show uses Nuke for compositing. So a lot of people, you might already know these tools. Autodesk is the publisher of Maya, which is still the de facto animation package for doing character animation. Although Houdini is actually starting to make some inroads in the character animation part as well. Plus, Autodesk makes a software called Flame, which is a compositing software that is now becoming used more and more. It's the actual very original compositing software. And it fell out of favor for a while, but it's becoming, because it's so fast and so powerful, a lot of studios are starting to use it remotely, where they run it in the cloud and have their artists work remotely on the software. And they do high-end commercial work because it's real time and it does, you know, it has an incredible tool set. So Blender is an open source software that in the recent 3.0 release has now become one of the primary animation tools for the future. Epic Games has put some money into it. It can be used for asset creation to feed into your Unreal Engine, your virtual reality pipeline. The rendering quality is amazing. It's fast and it's open source. So that's another tool that's now available at no cost to the artist to be able to start building out studios based on this technology. Now, reality capture is the software that will take the photos for photogrammetry and can take a bunch of a bunch of photos and make a real object out of it. Then you can use within your production. You saw an example of it creating the characters for the Fathead demo. That was a software called Reality Capture that takes all those photos and builds the geometry from the photos and then uses the photos to put back over the geometry. So those are some of the other tools that are available now to be able to create these realistic environments that you're seeing now, and that's expected. The problem with all these tools is the expectations of the production values that you have to deliver now are getting higher and higher. And we might be able to blame Game of Thrones for that, because Game of Thrones created this high bar of visual effects for TV series, not a theatrical, but a TV series. And a lot of the networks now demand a level of quality on par with something like that. So the other thing that's starting to make inroads is machine learning. And I don't use the word AI because it's kind of a misnomer. But machine learning is now being used to be able to match up images more realistically and do facial animations more realistically by tapping into libraries of existing images that they can compare against to. And a lot of that's still kind of proprietary and under development, but that's going to have a big effect in the coming years of being able to automate your visual effects pipelines and be able to create automated pre-visualization and automated animations of actors and characters and stuff like that that are realistic beyond what you can do in a computer now. One thing I wanted to discuss too is a lot of these tools are all based on algorithms. And there's still a lot of work that can be done with techniques. And it's always been a trade-off because you can spend a lot of time trying to get an algorithm to do what you want it to do to get it to look real, or a lot of times you can use techniques to achieve the same goal. So it has to be said to be, you must be very careful not to get too caught up in the idea that an algorithm is going to solve your problems, and that in a lot of cases it's faster, better, and easier to do it with artists who are true artists who know the techniques on how to achieve what you want in your shot. So that's just something that needs to be said regarding all these new tools, as wonderful as they are. If you want a really good looking explosion, a lot of times it's better just to blow something up, you know, than try to sit there and make it look like you want it to look. Just go blow it up and it's going to look real. It's going to look right. The other thing is available now, and it's going to grow, and it's a potential business opportunity, are creating all these asset libraries of high quality buildings and objects and vehicles and things like that that can be reused in these virtual production pipelines or in these feature film pipelines or television pipelines. So you're not constantly, you know, paying for the same thing over and over again. With these asset libraries, a lot of times you can go initially to those libraries and find a high quality tank or a car or a plane or something like that that's already built, and you can just purchase that or license it, use it in your production. If you're a visual effects company, you can actually create these assets and sell them as you know, and make some money with it. There's libraries of smoke, explosions and things like that, very high quality, have been rendered out of Houdini and software like that, that you can actually buy the files to make that simulation without actually having to do that simulation. It's already done for you. So that's an area that's really expanding and growing, and it's a way to help save time and money on your productions that's available now, and it's going to only get better. As far as what it takes now to collaborate on a global scale, there's a number of tools out there. Some of them are been around for a while. Some are fairly new. One of the ones that a lot of companies are using now is called Frame.io. And what that allows you to do is have a team review the same video and make notes into the same video. And usually you do that in conjunction with a Zoom call. And it gives you ability to track your notes and just collaborate and review you know, your work and with the team, so you have a good understanding of what you know, is going on and can keep track of those notes. Recently, DaVinci Resolve, which has now become one of the de facto standards for color correction in your finishing process, has released version 18, which includes full collaboration, cloud collaboration. And what they're trying to do with this is now you can have multiple artists working on the same project in different locations remotely, and have all that tracked and all that work together in one timeline. And this will be pretty revolutionary, because With DaVinci Resolve, you have visual effects, you have audio, you have editorial, and you have color correction and finishing all in one package. That means you could have teams of people in all those different areas, multiple people working on the same project, and it all is unified into one location and rendered out almost as it's being done. I recently delivered a pilot for a Nickelodeon show earlier this year that we had it all remote. We did it in DaVinci. We set it up. It was a virtual set, green screen shoot with animation, with live action over Unreal Engine rendered backgrounds with character animation done by M2 in Thailand, and compositing it all together on the timeline in Resolve, working with the post producer in Kentucky, and I'm in Los Angeles. So that's the way of the future. You're gonna be going back and forth, sharing timelines and sharing edits and cuts remotely, and going to be able to manage all that with these new tools that are coming out. Now, as far as the workstation, when you're dealing with remote artists, a lot of the studios, especially like Netflix, they have the servers, and you have to remote into their servers. You don't use your computer. You have to remote into their computer, or you have to remote into the cloud. And the main software that's being used for that now is Teradici, which was recently purchased by Hewlett Packard. So it's high quality, remote, high performance, remote control access of high-end workstations, so that your artists don't need to have a super high-end workstation. They just need a computer that can log in with a good internet connection into someone else's high-end workstation and be able to do high quality, high-end work without having to buy or pay for the expensive workstations. So this is another piece of the puzzle that is allowing artists to work from anywhere in the world on high-end stuff for any studio in the world and still have it secure and not have performance issues and not have to transfer data back and forth. That's the other advantage of being able to do it this way. If I'm in a small town in some part of the world that doesn't have big internet, I can't be getting gigabytes worth of files from to work on, then send gigabytes back. But if all I need to do is log into their computer where it's all in their studio, we don't have to transfer any files, and it's also much more secure. The studios like it a lot better. The other thing that's really important is shot tracking, like software like F-Track or ShotGrid from Autodesk, being able to track the shots and the progress of the people working on it and their tasks, and being able to give notes back and forth and manage versioning of things like that. So this type of software is also very, very important. A lot of people try and shortcut with Google Docs or a spreadsheet, and when you get into complicated production, it just won't work. That'll break really fast, and you'll have nothing but problems trying to track hundreds of shots in a movie with a spreadsheet. It's just not a good idea. So you have to look at software like F-Track or ShotGrid to be able to do that. I was originally supposed to go into virtual production, but Eric and Kuhn Pun did such a great job covering it. I don't really need to cover it anymore, except I did want to mention that in Thailand, Bryn Cadman has a virtual production stage, supremestudio.asia, if anybody wants to go see what we were talking about in Thailand. That's already set up. So that's pretty much it for now.
Okay, that should be all right. Okay, very interesting points right there made by Kun Thomas, so thank you very much. Questions and comments right now from our members of the audience, and also welcome back to the Facebook Live, because we had a glitch there as well, so welcome back for those of you who are viewing on Facebook Live. First question to you, Thomas Polson. What is still lacking in the visual effects post-production in Thailand, in your opinion? What's lacking here in Thailand?
Well, there's a couple of strengths. One is there's companies like Yanix. I don't know if people are aware of Yanix. Yanix is a company that does tracking. They do camera tracking, and it started in Thailand. And they're really, really well respected. They have an office here in LA and stuff like that. So there are areas where, you know, Thailand has shown some you know, advanced capabilities. I think it boils down to training. It really is getting the artists trained into a expectation of what a studio like in Hollywood expects to be delivered, and the workflow and the skill set in order to be able to you know, deliver shots at the level that is expected in Hollywood.
Can you sort of give, let's say, a broad example of a production or film that did not use the help of post-production or visual effects compared to a film that actually used high-quality visual effects in post-production? I mean, what is the difference? How much of a difference does it make?
Well, a lot of times, from a producer standpoint, a lot of times the difference is how much money you can get to sell your film. If you don't do good quality effects, it's going to lessen the value of your project. And the buyers are going to look at it and go, well, those are kind of cheap effects. You know, we don't, you know, we're only going to pay you this amount of money. But if you put the, you know, the time and energy into doing quality, I can't think of an example offhand because the quality of so many films have gotten so good. I know there's some, I'm trying to think of some Chinese films that had some pretty bad effects, but the global level of quality has gotten pretty good because the expectations from the buyers have gotten so high.
Okay, so a lot of emphasis on post-production and also visual effects in terms of the quality that it produces, and buyers are looking for these qualities. Also, people are asking about remote working. How effective is it when you have people working remotely? Because some people like their employees to be in the office or work with people in the office. However, with the pandemic, is it still effective working remotely in post-production, do you think?
It's problematic because it depends on the artist. It depends on the individual you hire, because the ones that can work unsupervised and are self-managed are fantastic. You know, those work great remotely, but there's some artists who are real artistic and need somebody kind of keeping an eye on them to make sure that they're focused. The best way I've found working remotely, and I've done it for years, is working remotely with an existing team. If you already have a group that are already kind of working together as a team on their end, it's much easier remote work with a team like that than just the individuals, because they all have the accountability already in place, and their expectations are already being managed as the group instead of the individuals. But if you find a good individual who can work independently, they're great. But like DreamWorks, the problem they found some people were more productive, some people were less productive when they went completely remote.
Could you give an example, maybe how many people working remotely at the same time or concurrently have you worked with during the pandemic? How many teams?
Usually I keep it fairly small. Recently I just did a small job where I had one person in China, one person in Ethiopia, one person in California, and it didn't work so well.
Okay, what happened there?
It's just too hard to manage, and the individuals were not as proactive as you would want them to be. I just wouldn't recommend doing something like that.
All right, so you would recommend if somebody were to work remotely, they should be able to work without being supervised too much. That would work the best. That would be the ideal person. A person who can
Yeah.
independently work without being told what to do or supervised too much.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, it's almost a waste of time working with an artist like that because you just don't get what you need productivity-wise out of them.
All right. Also, last question from our audience. You had programs to use. You talked about Houdini, you talked about Unreal, and you also talked about MetaHuman. Could you possibly advise our Thai audience, what do you think is the most cost-effective and best program to use at the moment, in your opinion, for post-production?
To use for what?
Visual effects and post-production.
Well, it's kind of like, you have to know what the problem is you're trying to solve before you can decide which is the tool to use.
I see.
So if you have a battle scene on an ocean, you're going to use Houdini for the water.
Yep.
And but you're going to do your compositing in Nuke, and you're going to also have practical elements of water that you probably shot to then composite in and add to your simulation. So it just kind of depends on the problem you're solving, but there's two ways to look at it. One is, what tool is the best tool, and what tool can you actually get artists to work? Because a lot of times you find you can't staff, especially these days. It's very difficult to staff up right now because everybody's working. Artists working around remotely is my team I normally work with in Korea wouldn't take any work from me if it wasn't more than a month guaranteed work, because they were getting 4 or 5 calls a day from Netflix. So it kind of depends on who you want to get. There's software I prefer, like for compositing. Nuke is not my first choice, but if I had to staff up, I have to go with Nuke because I can get Nuke artists.
Okay.
The other software nobody knows. So it kind of depends on what you're doing. Like animation, there's a lot of Maya artists out there. So if I need Maya, if I need to do animation, a creature or something like that, I can't go with Blender. Blender can do the job. I'd rather go with Blender, but I can't find the right level of Blender artists to be able to do the work. So I need to go with Maya.
All right. So for our Thai audiences listening in right now, it really depends on what the problem is you are trying to solve. Very specific. Thomas Polson would like you to do as much research as possible in terms of the programs that are being used out there right now and see which one works best for each individual project, because these programs are quite specific, aren't they?
Yeah, they each one has its strength, and you can't go with just one. You have to. Yep. It's a mix. It's a toolbox, and it's part of the toolbox. And each one you have to have a little bit of it in your toolbox, because not one program does everything.
Well, thank you so much, Thomas Polson. Thomas Polson will still be joining us for our special Q&A session at the very end. So thank you again to him.